Welcome to this edition of News Today, a series in which we discuss and briefly analyze the important news of the day. Let's have a look at today's main headlines. The COP28 UAE Declaration on Climate and Health unveiled. The Global Renewables and Energy Efficiency Pledge signed by 118 countries on the sidelines of the annual UN Climate Summit. India re-elected to the International Maritime Organization's Council for 2 years. An Eye on Methane report by the International Methane Emissions Observatory 2023 released. The Union Minister for Jal Shakti releases the Dynamic Groundwater Resource Assessment Report for the country 2023. The Guidelines for Prevention and Regulation of Dark Patterns 2023 notified by the Central Consumer Protection Authority. Starting with the first main news, the COP28 UAE Declaration on Climate and Health has been unveiled. It has been released by UAE in partnership with the World Health Organization. The initiative is aligned with the first ever Health Day organized by the Conference of Parties of UNFCCC. Let's have a look at the key features of the declaration. Its objective is to place health at the heart of climate action and accelerate the development of climate resilient, sustainable and equitable health ecosystems. It also aims to promote One Health approach. This approach recognizes the interconnection between people, animals, plants, and their shared environment. The declaration has been endorsed by over 120 countries, including US, UK, Brazil. India, however, has not signed it yet. So, what is the need of this declaration? Well, firstly, there is a rise in pollution-related morbidities as about 9 million people die annually due to pollution. Another factor is the exposure to extreme weather events, as around 189 million people are exposed to extreme events. Also, the low-income countries are highly vulnerable as they have poor infrastructure. Additionally, in order to implement the declaration, the COP28 guiding principles for financing climate and health solutions were also unveiled. Moreover, the Asian Development Bank announced the launch of a new climate and health initiative to support the health-related commitment. Before we conclude this news, let's have a look at the steps taken by India to mitigate health risk associated with climate change. These include the National Action Plan on Climate Change and Human Health, early warning alerts of environmental concerns, environmental health surveillance, National Health Mission funds, and the Indian Public Health Standards 2022. In another news, the Global Renewables and Energy Efficiency Pledge has been signed by 118 countries on the sidelines of the annual UN Climate Summit. The pledge aims to triple the global installed renewable energy capacity to at least 11,000 gigawatts. It also seeks to double the global energy efficiency improvement rate to more than 4% by 2030 and to phase down unabated coal power and end of financing of new coal-fired power plants. The renewable energy capacity goal was first mentioned in the New Delhi's G20 declaration and has the potential to avoid greenhouse gas emissions by about 7 billion tons of CO2 equivalent. Coming back to the pledge, it will enable the collaboration on resilient value chains and technology development. It will also expand the financial support for scaling renewable energy and provide technical support and capacity building for developing economies. It will also accelerate the cross-border grid interconnections. Herein, all the G20 countries barring India, China and Russia have signed on to the pledge. India did not sign the pledge. As part of its nationally determined contributions, it has committed to install 500 gigawatts of electricity from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. India has mentioned that coal is and will remain an important part of India's energy mix. This is because India will witness the largest energy demand growth over the next 30 years, which may not be met by renewables alone. Moving on to the next news, India has been re-elected to the International Maritime Organization's Council for 2 years. India's re-election falls under the category of 10 states with the largest interest in international seaborne trade. The International Maritime Organization, or the IMO, is responsible for the safety and security of shipping and preventing marine and atmospheric pollution by ships. The IMO Council acts as the executive organ of the IMO. The IMO, with its headquarters in London, was established in 1948. It has 175 members, including India, and 3 associate members. Let's understand the role of IMO for environmental protection. The Marpol Convention covers pollution of the marine environment by ships from operational or accidental causes. The particularly sensitive sea area is a special area designated by IMO for extra protection due to its importance for ecological, socio-economic, or scientific reasons. The London Convention, which is overseen by the IMO, extends ocean protection beyond ships by regulating sea waste dumping and climate change mitigation like carbon capture and storage. Additionally, the IMO also plays a role in maritime safety and security. The SOLAS Convention sets standards for ship construction, equipment, and operations to ensure safety of life at sea. Also, to curb piracy and armed robbery globally, the Integrated Shipping Information System and the Djibouti Code of Conduct are some of the steps taken by the IMO. Additionally, the IMO's Maritime Safety Committee works on matters related to the prevention and suppression of drug smuggling on ships. An Eye on Methane report by the International Methane Emissions Observatory 2023 has been released. Before we get into the key highlights of the report, let's first understand about the International Methane Emissions Observatory or IMEO. It works under the UN Environment Programme and was launched at the G20 Leaders Summit 2021. It gathers data from satellites through Methane Alert and Response System and the Oil and Gas Methane Partnerships 2.0. The Methane Alert and Response System was launched at COP27 2022. Coming back to the key highlights, the report provides decision makers a framework of action to track and monitor methane emissions to plan targeted and ambitious actions for their mitigation. The report highlights that the global anthropogenic methane emissions are responsible for about 30% of the Earth's warming being experienced today. For this, the major contributors are the energy, agriculture, and waste sectors. Having said this, there are certain key measures required to curb these emissions. These include mapping hotspots to take specific actions, promoting gas mapping LiDAR technology to detect emission leakage from mines. Also, using methane from wastewater treatment plants as fuel is also needed. Before we conclude this news, let's have a look at the initiatives taken. At the global level, the Global Methane Pledge was launched at COP26 2021 to catalyze actions to reduce methane emissions. India is not a signatory of this pledge. Another initiative is the Global Methane Initiative, which is an international public-private partnership to support methane to energy projects. Domestically, measures in India include the National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture, India GHG program, which is an industry-led voluntary framework, and the Gobardhan scheme. In another news, the Union Minister for Jal Shakti has released the Dynamic Groundwater Resource Assessment Report for the country 2023. The assessment was carried out jointly by the Central Groundwater Board and the states and UTs. The Central Groundwater Board is an apex organization of the Ministry of Jal Shakti dealing with groundwater and related issues. Let's have a look at the key highlights of the report. The annual groundwater recharge for the entire country is 449.08 billion cubic meters, which is 11.48 billion cubic meters more than 2022. The increase may mainly be attributed to increase in recharge from canal seepage, return flow of irrigation water and water bodies and tanks, and water conservation structures. The report also says that rainfall contributes to nearly 60% of the total annual groundwater recharge, and the annual groundwater extraction is 241.34 billion cubic meters. Before we conclude this news, let's have a look at the steps taken by the government for groundwater conservation. These include the National Aquifer Mapping and Management to delineate aquifers and prepare management plans. Also, the Atal Bhujal Yojana focuses on demand-side interventions and convergence of schemes for groundwater management. The government has also prepared a master plan for artificial recharge to groundwater 2020, which includes artificial recharge in rural and urban areas. Additionally, the Jal Shakti Abhiyan has a special emphasis on rainwater harvesting or groundwater recharge. In another news, the Guidelines for Prevention and Regulation of Dark Patterns 2023 have been notified by the Central Consumer Protection Authority. These guidelines have been notified under the Consumer Protection Act 2019. Before we get into the guidelines, let's first understand what are dark patterns. It refers to practices adopted by online platforms that mislead people into paying for items or services they did not intend to do so originally. Let's have a look at the key provisions of the guidelines. It provides for prohibition against engaging in dark patterns. It is applicable to all platforms offering goods or services in India, advertisers and sellers. Also, in case of ambiguity or a dispute, the decision of the Central Consumer Protection Authority, which is a statutory body under the Consumer Protection Act, shall be final. The guidelines list 13 dark patterns. Some of them are basket sneaking, which is the inclusion of additional items at the time of checkout. Another one is confirm shaming, which is the use of a phrase or video to create a sense of shame. There is also a subscription trap, when making cancellation of a paid subscription becomes impossible or hiding the cancellation option. Plus, bait and switch is also one of the dark patterns. It happens when it is advertised a particular outcome based on the user's action but deceptively serves an alternate outcome. Some other forms are interface interference, nagging, software as a service billing, and rogue malware. The place in news for today is Nepal. Recently, Nepal has become the first South Asian nation to formally register same-sex marriage. Nepal, with its capital Kathmandu, is located along the southern slopes of the Himalayan mountain ranges. It is a landlocked country located between India to the east, south and west and the Tibet Autonomous Region of China to the north. Coming to its geographical features, Nepal can be divided into 5 main physical belts: the Terai, Churia Hills or Shivaliks, Middle Hills or Mid-Mountains, High Mountains and the High Himalayas stretching in the parallel belts in succession from south to north. Its major rivers are Kosi, Narayani, Karnali, and its highest point is the Mount Everest. As we conclude today's main news, let's go through some quick updates. The AUKUS, which is a group of Australia, UK and US, has signed an agreement to jointly operate deep space advanced radar capability to enhance collective space domain awareness. The National Company Law Appellate Tribunal has upheld the penalty imposed by the National Financial Reporting Authority on the auditors of DHFL. The National Financial Reporting Authority was constituted under the Companies Act 2013. The Climate Club has been launched at COP28 of UNFCCC. It is an open, inclusive, high-level forum for cooperation on climate action, particularly decarbonization of industry. WHO's Annual Malaria Report 2022 has highlighted that there were an estimated 249 million malaria cases globally. India accounted for 66% of malaria cases in the WHO Southeast Asia region. The first WHO Global Clinical Trials Forum was held recently. It endorsed a global vision for sustainable clinical research infrastructure. The Crime in India 2022 report has been released by the National Crime Records Bureau. The National Crime Records Bureau was constituted in 1986 and functions under the Ministry of Home Affairs. The Solar Wind Ion Spectrometer, which is the second instrument in the Aditya Solar Wind Particle Experiment payload, has become operational. The Solar Wind Ion Spectrometer measures the ions in the energy range of 100 eV to 20 keV. Recently, the Union Minister of State for Science and Technology addressed the first ever meeting of the Biotechnology Research and Innovation Council Society. The society is an apex autonomous society formed after the rationalization of 14 autonomous institutions of the Department of Biotechnology. Before we go, it's time to put your knowledge to the test in today's segment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed this edition of News Today. To get the answer to today's quiz and to download the PDF of News Today, make sure to check out the links in the description below.